because I need to be thoughtful.
Oh, yeah.
Don't want to be in the spotlight, but okay, that's better. I wanted to thank FSC for allowing me this opportunity to speak on this topic, which is very near to my heart, as with many Iranians in the diaspora for whom the past 6 months has been like incredibly emotionally tumultuous. And what we have been through is nothing compared to the pain and suffering those who are inside Iran have endured just because they are seeking their basic freedom and basic rights. So thank you so much for the introduction, and I think I'm just gonna have to share my screen now, is that correct? So I can, all right, let's do that. Okay. Okay, everyone can see that? So the title of, am I echoing again? Oh, no, no, okay. Oh, am I still echoing or I'm good? Okay. The topic that we're going to discuss today is, of course, woman life freedom and how we can learn from the revolutionary tenacity of Iranian women. So we've all seen images of fearless Iranian women standing in brave defiance at the forefront of the recent protests across Iran, waving their hijabs in the air, setting them aflame, and cutting their hair in opposition to the grave inequalities that they face. The fire within these women is evident, even felt through online images and videos that provide mere glimpses of the rage and fury as the government seeks to silence and crush their unanimous voice using internet shutdown, intimidation, and violence. In order to understand the role of women in the current movement today, we need to take a look at the history of women's involvement in the political atmosphere of Iran. So we're going to take a step back to the 1979 revolution. A few days after the 1979 revolution, which replaced a pro-Western secular and authoritarian monarchy with an anti-Western Islamic theocracy, the attack on women began with the implementation of mandatory hijab. On March 7, 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini decreed mandatory veiling for all women in their workplace and announced that women were no longer to enter public spaces unveiled, which he termed as naked. The next day happened to be International Women's Day, March 8th, and tens of thousands of women took to the streets in massive protests and a resistance that has continued in various forms for the past 4 decades. In 2006, a group of women started the 1 million signatures campaign to gather signatures asking Parliament to grant equal rights to women. The campaign's biggest achievement was its ability to draw women from all walks of life, secular and religious, young and old, rural and urban, wealthy and impoverished. Many activists of the movement were jailed and attacked by the government, and their website was repeatedly shut down. The campaign brought about parliamentary action that gave women inheritance rights over their husband's property and entitled female victims of roadside accidents to receive the same amount of blood money as men, which previously they received only half. The parliament also prevented the passage of the Family Protection Bill, which would have mandated women to pay a tax on their fiance's dowry, and would have allowed men to take additional wives without the consent of their first wife. Another campaign that started around this time was Stop Stoning Forever campaign, which was an initiative that advocated repealing the Iranian penal code provisions regarding stoning, which is a punishment for adultery in which women are buried up until their chest in the ground and they are stoned to death. Since its start in 2006, the campaign has rescued several women and 1 man from stoning and secured their release from prison. Several sentences have been altered from stoning to lashing or imprisonment, which of course is still horrendous, but an improvement. Then we jump to the uprising against electoral fraud that occurred in 2009, which was known as the Green Movement. Women, young and old, religious, non-religious, once again were at the forefront of democratic aspirations, fueling the protests with their relentlessness. Thousands of women joined their peers to defy bullets and police batons in the streets of Iran as they stood alongside men to demand a recount of what they insisted was a rigged presidential election. They risked their lives, and some paid the ultimate price, like 26-year-old philosophy student Neda Avasultan, whose shooting rocked the internet. Neda was shot point blank in Tehran during the protest, with the last few seconds of her life caught on a grainy cell phone video. Neda became the iconic symbol of the movement and that of the heroic presence of women in yet another struggle of the people for democracy and change. Mousavi, the leader of that movement, was placed under house arrest, and he continues to be under house arrest to this day. 5 years later, in 2014, Masih Alinejad, who's an exiled journalist and activist, and is a very prominent voice in the current movement, spearheaded the hashtag #MySelfieFreedom online movement, which started as a Facebook page where women in Iran would post photos of themselves without scarves as a protest against the mandatory hijab. It became the largest civil disobedient campaign to challenge the compulsory hijab in Iran until now. These laws force all women from the age of 7 to wear hijab and treat women as second-class citizens. Women have no choice but to obey these oppressive laws or face as many as 72 lashes, a jail sentence, and a fine. In 2017, Masih Alinejad also founded what's called White Wednesdays, an initiative where she called upon women to wear white on Wednesdays as a sign of protest against the hijab. And this created another platform for female dissidents to be able to share their discontent with the world and outwardly express their defiance. So I'd like to play this video here, which I think exemplifies a lot of the courage and strength that we are discussing today. Hopefully. Sound still working for everyone at home? I think it's the internet issue.
صبح چهارشنبهتون بخیر.
سلام مسیح جون، اینجا اصفهانه.
چهارشنبه که
اینجا رامسره.
من از ساغر.
ما در تهران هستیم، مشغول پیاده روی بدون حجاب. مسیح اینو فقط به خاطر تو گرفتم، میخوام ببینم کی به من حرف میده. اینجا ایرانه.
چرا به شخصیت آدم توهین میکنید؟ چرا تو حق انتخاب آدم دخالت میکنید؟
خب بردهداری هم یه روز قانون بود. چرا به قانون بد نباید احترام گذاشت؟
قانونی که شأن انسانیت آدم زیر قانونی که آدم تحقیق کنه، انسانیت آدم رو لغو کنه قانون.
بله.
سرت کن کثافت.
به تو ربطی نداره. به تو ربطی نداره. عادتتون شده. ببخشید.
الان باید چی میزنی؟ باید چی میزنی؟ که
اجازه درست کن، ما شهید دادیم. اجازه درست کنه.
باری کلا آقا شما سعی کن با 4 تا موی یه خانم تحریک نشی. شما سعی کن نگاه نکنی با 4 تا مو تحریک نشی. شما اگه با 4 تا مو تحریک میشی بهتره بری جلوی خودت نگه داری.
جای خدا نیستی.
بیا برو خانم جمعش کن، دیگه کسی به این حرفا گوش
آزادی و آزادی برای همه زنان، زنان علیه زنان نباشیم. همه ما زنها باید حامی هم باشیم.
و امیدوارم روزی برسه که ما زنان دیگه مجبور نباشیم برای طبیعی ترین حق خودمون مبارزه بکنیم.
یاسمن رو گرفتن، مژگان صدا شد. مژگان رو گرفتن، فرشته صدا شد. فرشته رو گرفتن، من، بابا، صدای فرشتم. من رو هم دستگیر کنید. تمام کسایی که برای صلح، آزادی و برابری و کرامت انسانی فعالیت میکنن رو دستگیر کنید. آقای خامنه‌ای،
من مطمئنم که تمام زنان دنیا به وجود زنان ایرانی افتخار میکنن به خاطر مقاومتشون، شجاعتشون و پایداریشون. روز زن به همه شما مبارک باشه.
For being here. So, as you have seen, just incredible, incredible bravery, because these women know what they can potentially face, and yet they still go out, they still fight, they still do not back down. So Mahdi's campaign, which we just talked about, White Wednesday, My Selfie Freedom, alarmed the Supreme Leader, Khamenei, who periodically railed against her in speeches and attempted to have her kidnapped on US soil in 2021. 1 year later, a similar plot was to end in her assassination, according to the US Justice Department. On a wintry day in December 2017, Vida Movahedi stood defiantly on a utility box on a busy crossroads on Revolution Street in Tehran, waving her white headscarf on a stick in an act of civil disobedience. White Wednesdays appears to have been behind Vida's protest. The image of her peaceful protest went viral, and she was dubbed the girl from Revolution Street. She was imprisoned for 8 months for the crime of encouraging people to corruption and prostitution. Dozens of Iranian women followed suit in the coming months, and at least 30 were arrested. They came to be referred as the girls from Revolution Street. These acts of civil disobedience have been likened to the brave defiance of Rosa Parks in her refusal to abide by the imposed oppression of her time. For as oppression takes on a similar visage and garb for those oppressed across the globe, so does the struggle for freedom. Around the same period of time, between 2017 and 2019, there were a series of worker protests and strikes throughout Iran that included truckers, teachers, shopkeepers, students, that started off seeking economic justice, but quickly spread and turned into opposition against the regime and the supreme leader. One example of the incredible courage of Iranian women is exemplified in the story of Sepideh Ghelian, who was arrested in 2018 at the age of 23 for reporting on a labor protest organized by a workers' union in Hafez Khuzestan. During her imprisonment, Sepideh reported being slammed against a wall, shoved to the ground, humiliated with flogging, and threatened with sexual assault and murder. Ghelian stated intelligence officers repeatedly subjected her to sexual insults such as whore, and threatened to make sure that her family would receive information that would make them murder her for honor. Sepideh wrote of her experiences later in a memoir, and the title is written here. And she was arrested again in 2019, and just recently was released on March 15th of this year after serving her 4-year sentence. As soon as Sepideh stepped out into the streets a free woman, she was seen on an Instagram post defiantly yelling the chant, "Khamenei, you tyrant, we will pull you to the ground," repeatedly. Within hours of her release, she was imprisoned once again, and is still imprisoned at this time. With this brazen act, Sepideh sends a courageous signal the tyrannical government, showing that not only did they not break her, but they have further fueled her fire. A recent horrific CNN report exposed Iranian authorities' use of rape to intimidate protesters and quell the unrest. Countless stories of women suffering unspeakable torture have been heard, especially among ethnic minorities who face disproportionately higher rates of violence and aggression. Despite the risk of such horrific treatment and even death, Iranian women continue to fight back and demand their inherent rights to life and freedom. And they have been doing so since the early days after the inception of this misogynistic regime. This history of resistance has undoubtedly played a role in the explosive uprising that shook the country after Jina Amini's death and the swift adoption of the Woman Life Freedom slogan at its core. But what is woman life freedom, or Jin Jian Azadi, and what are its roots? Mahsa Amini was of Kurdish origin. The name her parents chose for her at birth was in fact Jina, a Kurdish name, forbidden by authorities due to not being on the approved list of Persian language names. This very fact, sadly, points to the immense degree of oppression Jina and other members of ethnic communities face in Iran, where their identity is suppressed from the moment that they take their very first breath. On the day Jina was buried, after her violent and unjust death at the hands of the morality police, a female mourner shouted the words "Jen Jian Azadi" and cut her hair in anguish over her gravesite. The act of cutting one's hair has now become a symbol of this movement, as Mahsa's life was taken because of showing a few strands of hair. The Farsi translation of Jen Jian Azadi, or Zan Zindagi Azadi, spread instantly to Tehran and became the rallying cry and essence of the blazing female revolution that we witness today. They have come to signify not only the demand for women's bodily autonomy, but a collective resistance against 43 years of repression by the Iranian regime. But what do these words really mean? As a Kurdish revolutionary slogan, these words represent a universal collective women's struggle. The slogan originated with the Kurdish freedom movement in Turkey and was inspired by the writings of imprisoned Abdullah Öcalan, who said that a country cannot be free unless the women are free. In Öcalan's view, the enslavement of women was a prerequisite for the advent of the various forms of slavery that constitute civilization and what he calls capitalist modernity. Öcalan also believes the gender revolution is fundamental in breaking the chain of these overlapping forms of domination. He advocated for what is called genealogy, a Kurdish feminist school of thought that ultimately led to the development of an autonomous Kurdish women's movement. The Kurdish organizations inside Iran have had rocky relations with the Islamic Republic since its inception. About 2 months after the completion of the Iranian Revolution, the 1979 Kurdish rebellion erupted and became the largest of the nationwide uprisings and lasted about 4 years. The Kurds and other ethnic minorities in Iran, including Ahwazi Arabs, Baluchis, Azerbaijani Turks, are treated as second-class citizens and have faced racist discrimination and injustice for decades. It is not surprising, therefore, to see persistent and forceful protests in these areas, especially in Kurdistan and Baluchistan, despite the disproportionate use of force in these areas. This Persian ethno-supremism was evident in the governmental response to recent uprisings, where these regions were brutally targeted by military-grade weapons, in stark contrast to the predominant use of batons and pellet guns in Persian-majority cities. Countless secret executions have also been documented in these areas since the uprisings, using sham trials and forced compressions under torture. This photo shows the crowd gathered in Saqqez, which was Mahsa Amini's hometown, to mark the 40th day since her death. Thousands showed up in protest, despite a ban and threats from the government officials not to hold a public gathering. Security forces shot tear gas and opened fire on mourners on that day. As with all authoritarian colonial powers, the Pahlavi monarchy and later the Islamic Republic have relied on divisive tactics to create resentment and distrust between Persian Iranians and ethnic minorities to prevent a unified front of dissent. However, the political consciousness and savvy of the Iranians was evident when slogans embodying unity and support of ethnic minorities began to echo in the streets recently in protest. One such chant translated to Kurdistan, Zahedan, the light and eye of Iran. This unity was also seen in images and videos of women with hijab protesting along women without hijab, exemplified in another powerful chant that states, with hijab or without hijab, towards revolution we come. Another group that is severely persecuted in Iran are members of the LGBTQ community. Over the past 4 decades, thousands of individuals have been executed merely because of their sexual identity and orientation. Many have sought asylum in other countries. In a recent speech, the Iranian President Raisi declared that the protests which erupted across Iran had nothing to do with women's life or freedom, and everything to do with an insidious campaign launched by Iran's enemies to undermine the regime. Raisi blamed the West for being guilty of commodifying women and propagating the vilest form of obscenity, homosexuality. Protesters and LGBTQ activists alike are charged with enmity against God or corruption on earth, both of which carry death sentences and have historically been used against any political opposition. So the intersectionality that is embodied by the Women Life Freedom movement, therefore, represents the oppression faced by a diverse group of people under the tight grips of this regime. This movement was born as all of these social uprisings surrounding various demands merged together with the triggering force of Mahsa Amini's death. The morality police, which predominantly focuses on women's attire in public spaces, has served as the ideological flag of this regime. And so the rageful protests resulting from the death of Mahsa Amini, as a result of facing this totalitarian brutality, resulted in all of these social struggles coming together and merging under a single unit. The Women Life Freedom not only merged people within Iran, but it also reached neighboring Afghanistan and encouraged and motivated women to seek their freedoms and rights as well. The role of men in this movement has also been instrumental, as men stand alongside women hand in hand, risking bullets, torture, execution. And their presence also signals that the current uprising is not only a woman's issue and that it garners support from all genders and walks of life. Women in Iran who are fighting for their rights are often called whores or perverts. The unwavering support of men in the fight for women's rights was evident in a chant that spread across universities in Iran that translates to, "You're the pervert, you're the whore, the free woman is me." And in these chants, you can see the men saying the first part, the woman saying the second part. We would be remiss not to mention the deliberate and systematic gas poisoning of schoolgirls across Iran in the past several months. I can't breathe. That all too familiar, disturbing phrase uttered by Eric Garner as a result of police brutality was recently heard gasping from the gasping lips of schoolgirls across Iran. Yeah. It is thought to be an attempt to punish these young girls for their role in the movement. I'm going to skip forward just a little bit because I know we're done here before I get another student. Okay. This is great. Good. So something that happened recently that I wanted to make sure that I touched upon was the latest attempt of the government to stamp out any form of rebellion and freedom of expression among female youth. Was 5 teenage girls who were arrested for posting a dance video for International Women's Day in the neighborhood called Ekpadan. The video went viral and police used security footage to find them and hunt them down. They were interrogated and forced to confess on video for their wrongdoing. And since then, they have been reported missing. So people around the world are dancing. You might have seen them on social media to the same song that they danced in support and in support of their courage and for their freedom. Stories such as these have reverberated throughout the globe and touched many. What we see in Iran today is a revolution initiated by women, culminating from 44 years of systematic oppression and suffocation felt most severely by women, youth, ethnic and religious minorities, and the LGBTQ community. At its core is the freedom of women as the key to the freedom of society as a whole. A prominent feature of this protest is how diverse they are, from ethnic minorities to religious and liberal, to the private sector, working class, women's rights activists, political dissidents, and LGBTQ individuals. The protests have united an unprecedented cross-section of the Iranian populace in a merged expression of discontent with this theocratic, misogynistic, totalitarian regime. So how can we help? I'd like to ask you to contact your representatives and ask them to sign the MAFA Act, which asks for targeted sanctions on the supreme leader, Iran's president, the government officials, and any economic apparatuses under their control. Of course, you can attend protests that we have through Bay Area for Iran. You can follow Bay Area for Iran through Instagram. And if you have an artistic side to you, there's also a quilt project that is being done where people are submitting small pieces of art, and these are being formed into large quilts to be placed on display to also raise awareness. So I'd like to end with a quote by Ijeoma Omavinu. Nobody warned you that the woman whose feet you cut from running would give birth to daughters with wings. Thank you.
No me pueden escuchar, solo estoy escuchando el programa distanciado. Me equivoco, son dos de Round of Woodlight. También, este es el más antiguo.
Moises? Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Zahra. That was a beautiful presentation, and I wish I could save it right in my brain. I hope you can send us the PowerPoint presentation and the links and everything. I'm gonna watch like all those videos. They were very powerful. I should put my mask down. So I can't wait to discuss that. Discuss all the things you brought up. So our next speaker is Norma Gallegos. Norma is a member of the Freedom Socialist Party and Radical Women and the National Mobilization. Norma is a member of our next speaker. Norma is a member of the Freedom Socialist Party and Radical Women and the National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice. A queer Chicana born in the Mission and raised in the Excelsior district of San Francisco, Norma has been active in international revolutionary socialist feminist politics, anti-fascist organizing, and reproductive justice defense for over 20 years. Norma served as a special education paraprofessional in the SFUSD for 6 years and is currently an automotive technician in San Francisco. Norma goes by any premise.
Hi.
Yep.
So when I met Zahra as a member of Bay Area for Iran, she reached out to Bay Area FSP. My heart immediately jumped. She wanted to work together after she found out that we were organizing a counter demonstration against the anti-abortion right-wing Walk for Life this past January. This is a brave act. To connect the tenacity of Iranian women who are continuing the Iranian revolution, who have no abortion rights, to US women and people who lost the right to abortion. Since 1979, FSP and our sister organization, Radical Women, were among the few leftists who opposed the right-wing Khomeini regime. We defended the socialist revolution in Iran. We highlighted the leadership of Iranian women. Other leftists labeled us as CIA feminists. But our principle is to embrace the leadership of the most oppressed in the fight against capitalism. My first introduction to the 1978 and 1979 Iranian Revolution was reading the comic book graphic novel Persepolis 1 and 2 by Marjane Satrapi. She was coming of age and growing in the brutalities of the regime. Her book helped me to understand the political character of the Shah regime that was overthrown and the role of the Ayatollah Khomeini, who moved in to preserve capitalism and impose theocracy. These right-wing fundamentalists took away the rights of women, stoned LGBTQIA people, as Zahra mentioned, and persecuted, exiled, and murdered leftists, Marxists, anarchists, and anyone who resisted the new government. Her family, friends were persecuted, arrested, and murdered. She was 10 at the start of the Khomeini regime in the 1980s. Her love of feminism and subcultures like punk rock, which I very much connected with, made her a target and endangered her life. She became a part of the diaspora of Iranian women who were forced to leave the country, but never left their culture and heritage. They have empowered and educated others on what the Iranian Revolution meant to the world. In FSP, as Trotskyist socialist feminists, we emphasize the necessity of women's leadership in global revolution. This is the key to our analysis. During the period, as Zahra mentioned, of the most pervasive repression of the Shah, mainly the women dared demonstrate against him. Their militant slogans included, "No limitations to our freedom. We have not made the revolution to have to start all over again. Those who attack women attack the revolution. And at the dawn of freedom, we have no freedom." A German newspaper in March 1978 issue wrote, "These demands show that women are aware of their specific role within the revolutionary process. The question is not the chatter, but the advancement of the revolution. Today, women are on the forefront of the Iranian Revolution." FSP wrote in our winter 1987 issue about the crisis of the left. We said, "Radicals who have survived the terror are unfortunately guided by the politics of Stalinism and Maoism, which have historically collaborated with such class enemies as Iran's right-wing Muslim leaders and businessmen. The right wing is far less confused about class lines. Its exiled religious leader, Khomeini, has ordered his followers not to collaborate with leftists against the Shah. Despite the erroneous position of much of the left, women surged to the forefront of the ranks of the young revolution, spurring history onward to new citadels, hospitals, banks, government offices, libraries, and many companies with large numbers of women workers closed down during the succession of women's marches throughout Iran. They were demonstrating against Khomeini, who then betrayed the Iranian revolutionary masses. He established a bourgeois republic. He intensified day by day the exploitation and oppression of the very workers who kicked out the Shah. His Islamic Republic, quote unquote, had already stoned, quote unquote, adulterous women and executed gays and sex workers. They were all secretly tried, if at all, and permitted no appeal or defense. Khomeini opposed abortion, divorce rights, and co-education, and instructed women to go back to the veil. I want to make clear 2 points. One is the need for the working class to take state power against the capitalist class and theocracy. And 2, that feminism must be integral in our movements. On the first point, we can draw from the many examples of revolts that have happened where the masses take to the streets, make demands, and then only to see the fervor of the streets and these demands be watered down and taken over by reformists and apologists for the profiteers. These misleaders chill the masses out and say there is no need to revolt nor to overthrow the capitalist system. This is what happened with the overthrow of the Shah's government, where one tyrant was replaced by another. Because the ones who have nothing to lose, who are at the bottom of the barrel of society, are the ones that are in those streets, and they have the direct line to become the leaders and the power that is needed to run the state and worldwide government. I spoke with a man at a recent anti-war demonstration. He asked me, what is the FSP saying about what needs to be done? My response to him is that the lowest of the low in this country needs to take leadership. And I'm talking about the women who are running things, the women who are leading things, LGBTQIA+ folk that are being brutalized on the streets and in conservative states. We know how to run the country. We are able to shut it down and run it ourselves for the betterment of society. And his response was, thank you. My second point is feminism. It is literally the unifying force of all our issues. At a Bay Area for Iran demo, I was flyering that for this meeting, an Iranian woman came up to me and said that this Iranian uprising is not solely about feminism. She said, it is about seeing us as humans and respecting where we are coming from. As a dialectical materialist, I couldn't agree with her more. But that really is what feminism is about. It's about seeing that people are human beings and that men are human beings. And anyone who is transgender, gender non-binary, or non-conforming are human beings. I asked my 18-year-old male coworker if he was a feminist because he denounced the former president as misogynistic and sexist. And he's leaning towards yes. The Iranian men joining the protests and yelling the slogan of women, life, and freedom in Iran are certainly hella feminist because they have seen and know that subjugating their sisters further subjugates them. Revolutionary socialist feminism is deep acknowledgement that the leadership of who are the most oppressed, once again, to be at the forefront of these movements. By not putting feminist principles to the forefront of the movements, we are not acknowledging who are the most impacted by war, by poverty, and by all the isms. I think it is a failure to not acknowledge that it was Iranian women workers who shut down the banks in the 1970s to the 2000s, as Zahra mentioned, where women were the key leaders in the streets, along with men, saying that women need freedom in the country and they are willing to bring down the repression against all people. There is no denying that Iran's upsurge is a beacon to all activists today. Anti-capitalist politics and profound solidarity among the exploited are key to revolution, and women are central. Likewise, patriarchy cannot be defeated without routing class discrimination. Combating the profit-driven system cannot succeed without defeating male supremacy. And with social media and hybrid meetings and Zoom and in person, we have the opportunity to be multi-issue, inclusive, and in solidarity across all borders. We need to connect all our struggles, from the worldwide COVID pandemic to the Iranian revolt, and global repression to reproductive justice. This was no coincidence. This was no coincidence in our conversation. So I was struck how Zahra characterized the similarities of mistreatment of Black women in the US South to how women are treated in Iran. US Black women in the South are under a racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic police Ku Klux Klan state. They lack health care, particularly abortion rights and care, and have the highest infant mortality rate, most notably in the state of Mississippi. And in the face of adversity and post-Jim Crow society, Southern Black women are leaders in their communities in addressing these and many other issues. From Fannie Lou Hamer on voting and women's rights to Michelle Colin, who founded Shiro, Mississippi, which stands for Sisters Helping Every Woman Rise and Organize. Reproductive justice was coined by Black women. The organization Sister Song defines reproductive justice as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. Iranian women and girls on TikTok have posted content to inform all media of not having human rights to maintain personal bodily autonomy. And as Zahra mentioned, and I don't have to mention it, but these Iranian young girls use the app TikTok to defy laws against them dancing. They were 5 who got in trouble. They were forced to publicly apologize, and their accounts are no longer available. Their hashtag of ex-Batan girls is now at views of 10.7 million. So the new hashtag is Save the ex-Batan girls, hashtag Save ex-Batan girls. There is always an opportunity to get involved and make these connections. But what is the best way to work together on the Iranian resistance? All the many different ways are important, but I do think to unite against the capitalist class from becoming fascist, the global working class needs to focus and lead more united front. A united front is essential where different parts of the left and social movements of any city on the planet can work together on key issues while debating differences. The radical left will need to embrace revolutionary socialist feminism to genuinely synthesize women's leadership to lead socialist revolution. We are working class feminists in action, and we have been highlighting and attending protests of reproductive rights and healthcare, and in solidarity with Bay Area for Iran. We must not let the resistance die out via media blackout and further restrictions to descend on the most oppressed in Iran, nor in the US. Just a note that FSP does intend to join March 31st as it is the International Transgender Day of Visibility, and we want to invite folks to join our contingent. US women losing Roe gave us the opportunity to look to Iranian women to be in solidarity, to men and other disenfranchised peoples to take up everyone's causes. To find the common enemy is extremely empowering and uplifting. So the next protest of us shouting for women, life, and freedom, let's topple the powers that be and make us the leaders.
Wow. So thank you very much to our two speakers, Norma and Zahra. I would, as a thank you for joining us. I mean, okay, so anyone who's paying attention can really join all these threads and see just the momentousness of this moment. That it's not just women. It's not just women throwing off hijab. It's everyone throwing off the metaphorical hijab of capitalism. So thank you so much for speaking. And FSP would like to gift our guest Zahra with this poster. Here, I'm just gonna show it. Show the poster. There we go. The Revolution Unveiled. Breaking those chains. I hope it looks great on your wall. And I would like to introduce Nancy Rico Cato.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you both for such a really moving, insightful, inspiring presentation. I'm the organizer for Bay Area FSP, Freedom Socialist Party, and one of the things we do, well, many things we do, but one of the things we do is we reach out, we build community and political support with other organizations, with other individuals around other causes, because we understand that together is where our power lies, and coming up with a way in which to, create a little bit of wiggle room for us to continue to survive, but at the same time, ultimately, we have to work together to overthrow this profit system. Given that we are still under capitalism for now, I am making an appeal to folks to say, we have an office here. We've had offices since pretty much our inception here in San Francisco, and we could really use your help to help us keep the lights on, to pay the rent, to make the copies, to pass out things, to keep the computers running. So we're passing around a basket here in person, and also online there is a link that you can donate directly or send us a check. So again, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, exciting. We have bats going around, and if you want to pledge some money in the chat, please do so. It helps, it helps support us and it helps us continue to have events like this. So I am excited to open the discussion, and people can ask questions of Norma and Zahra, and we can have a vibrant discussion. Are we going to stop the recording before the discussion, or the discussion will be recorded? Okay, so the recording is going to stop. Then we will